What's up, Rivalers, and welcome to the Ultimate Cloak and Dagger Guide. These heroes are a duo pair played as one character with two different sets of abilities that you can swap between at any time, giving you access to heals, damage, and some downright amazing utility. In this guide, I'll be covering Cloak and Dagger's combos, playstyle, advanced tips, and more. So whether you're a complete beginner or a high-ranking player, this video is for you. Cloak and Dagger are strategists that have incredibly consistent heals and can cancel out any enemy ultimate with the click of one button. Their kits are quite simple. Dagger is all about healing and helping your teammates, while Cloak deals damage and has some crazy utility. So let's cover their kits first. Dagger has a homing missile for her primary fire that damages enemies and heals allies. Her right click shoots out an AoE healing area that heals over time. Her E ability fires out a wall of light that heals and increases healing on allies. And pressing shift swaps characters to Cloak. Cloak's left click is an infinite ammo auto-aim drain ability that damages enemies. His right click shrouds his allies, making them untargetable and invulnerable to damage. His E ability fires out a wall that increases damage and blinds enemies. And no matter if you're playing as Cloak or Dagger, your ultimate is a 3-dash combo that leaves an area on the ground that heals allies and damages enemies. So let's go over each ability and teach you how to efficiently use each one, starting with Dagger. Dagger's primary fire is a homing missile with a bit of AoE, so throwing it onto isolated teammates to heal them is good, but throwing it into clumped up allies is even better since you'll be healing multiple allies at once. Her primary fire can be used offensively as well, but the damage is just not impressive. So the majority of time you'll be using your left click to heal allies, but you can use it to pick and finish off low HP enemies. Dagger's left click not only locks onto allies to heals, but can also bounce off walls, meaning you can provide some heals and value to a fight even if your ally breaks line of sight behind a wall. And even when bouncing off walls, the shots will still try to lock onto allies to heal. However, once a shot bounced off a wall, it will not lock onto enemies. Dagger's right click is an AoE field that heals allies. Once again, this is a great tool to throw into your team when they're all stacked up together. This healing bubble lasts 6 seconds, and it also heals you, so it is a great way to keep yourself alive by throwing it at your feet when you're getting dove. Just make sure to not leave the light bubble and you'll be able to survive through most duelist combos and dives. This is also the only way to heal yourself outside of your ultimate, so you do want to use this ability a little more selfishly. Saving this ability to save yourself and your other support is the absolute best way to use Dagger's healing bubble, and you should be relying mostly on your left click to heal your teammates. You should really only be using this ability on your team when you're desperate to keep them alive, or when you have no other options, like if your left click is reloading. Dagger's E is this wall of light, which a lot of players call a window. This will not only heal allies, but also increases all healing that allies receive, just like Jeff's bubble. You want to be relying mostly on your primary fire to keep your allies topped off, and save this ability for when health bars really start dropping dangerously low as an emergency heal button. The ability has a short range and a long cooldown, so be careful not to waste it. It moves through all allies, so once again, this is a great ability to throw on clumped up teammates. Try to find that right angle so that the window hits 2 or more allies to get the full value out of it. Now moving on to Cloak's abilities, his left click is an infinite ammo auto-aimed drain spell. This is going to be your main form of self-defense if you're getting dove and teammates aren't around to protect you or just aren't protecting you. Now don't get carried away and play too much of the match as Cloak, zapping people. Remember, primarily you are a healer, but swapping to Cloak and using your left click is a great way to finish off low HP targets and mobile enemies, since the tracking on this ability is really crazy. It's essentially auto-aim. Cloak's right click is one of the most powerful utility abilities in the game. It shrouds Cloak, allowing him to briefly fly by holding spacebar, and it protects Cloak and any allies within a huge circle, making them untargetable and invulnerable. This ability is great for repositioning yourself when you're getting targeted, but more importantly, with good timing, you can use it to keep your entire team alive through enemy ultimates. Now, one thing to know about Cloak's right click is it will stop shrouding and protecting your allies if they fire or reload, so it might be worth explaining to your team that all they need to do is stand still and do nothing when you shroud them, because getting a well-timed shroud and successfully protecting your team can 100% change the outcome of a team fight. Cloak's E ability is another window, but this time it's for offensive purposes. Landing this window on enemies deals some damage and increases the damage they take from all sources. But most importantly, it blinds the enemy. And while it's technically a blind, it's more of a nearsightedness because any enemy hit by this window will still be able to see within this range. This ability is perfect for firing through multiple stacked up enemies to maximize its effect, but you should absolutely feel free to target single heroes that are dependent on their aim. Enemy heroes like Hela and Hawkeye are completely worthless when blinded. Pressing Pressing shift as Dagger or Cloak swaps to the other character, and while there is a brief animation that plays, there's no cooldown, so you can freely swap between characters. You can also use the mouse scroll wheel to swap characters, which is a little easier in my opinion. And when you're Cloak, you can actually see Dagger's cooldowns on her E and right click abilities here, and vice versa, so you can actually track both characters' cooldowns at once. The trick to playing this character is balancing playing both. Your primary mission is to keep your team's health bars high as Dagger and swapping to Cloak to dish out damage, blinds, and clutch team saving shrouds. You should be spending 90% of your games as Dagger though, and swapping to Cloak mostly just to use your blind, put it on cooldown, and of course responsibly using that shroud to save yourself or your team. Cloak and Dagger's ultimate is the same ability no matter which character you're playing as. You dash 3 times in the direction of your camera, leaving a carpet on the ground which damages enemies and heals your allies. Now this ultimate is extremely powerful at contesting key areas of the map like choke points or the cart, but there is some secret tech to it because every dash lays a separate layer of the carpet and you can actually dash back and forth in the same area and stack these carpets up, with each one healing 220 HP per second, which means if you dash back and forth, you will create a small strip of land that heals every ally in it for 660 HP per second, essentially turning you invincible for a long time. The damage it deals to enemies isn't incredible, but the healing definitely is. So stacking up 2 or 3 carpets and dropping your right click on an area will give you and your team absurd amounts of healing. I mean, look at this Punisher ult. It's one of the scariest DPS ults out there, and it's not even coming close to KOing a Dagger that's just standing there because she's standing on stacked up carpets. And once again, you might just want to communicate with your team to stand in the stacked carpet instead of trying to chase your teammates down to heal them with your ultimate. Your ultimate is a great all-around tool to be used defensively once fighting breaks out and as a counter ult to enemies popping ults. For instance, if an enemy hella ults you, you can stack your carpet 3 times and then just have your team stand in the carpet, swapping to Cloak and DPSing while your ult heals your team for you. Another advanced tip is that Cloak and Dagger's ultimate is a soft cleanse for yourself. For example, if you're rooted by Groot's ultimate or Squirrel Girl's root, you can still ult. Now that we've explained their abilities, let's talk about some strengths of playing Cloak and Dagger. Their biggest strength lies in their consistent heals. With Dagger's right click, left click, E, and ultimate, you have a total of 4 ways to heal allies. Positioning in the back of your team should give you a really nice view of any ally health bars that need topped off, and Dagger's left click, homing, and AoE properties means you have no issues healing clumped up allies or single target allies such as flyers. Some strategists like Loki or Jeff can really struggle with landing heals on flyers, but that's just not a problem for Cloak and Dagger. Dagger's right click and Cloak's shroud also gives you 2 ways to survive and escape dives, which is way more than other strategists have. So even though you're mostly immobile, by holding on to at least one of these abilities, you become essentially undiveable. As Cloak and Dagger, you pretty much have twice as many abilities in the game as most characters, and part of mastering this hero is learning to cycle through all of them for a balance of offense and defense. But just remember, your healing output drops to 0 if you get picked, so always try to save at least 1 survival tool for yourself. And Cloak's right click is the best reactive ability in the game. Learning to quickly swap to Cloak and shrouding your team is an extremely important skill when mastering this hero. Hearing an enemy ultimate voice line go off means you need to swap to Cloak and shroud now. Getting this timing down is the difference between decent and great Cloak and Dagger players. Now let's talk about some of the weaker areas of playing Cloak and Dagger. Having 2 sets of abilities is nice, but all of Cloak and Dagger's abilities come with very long cooldowns, which means playing this hero requires a lot of spell discipline and game knowledge. You need to save every ability for the correct moment to use them, because you won't be able to use that ability again for a long time. Playing this character can be very punishing if you end up wasting even 1 spell, leaving you vulnerable. So knowing when and how to use every ability to its maximum efficiency makes playing this hero just a lot harder than most strategists. Another weakness is Cloak and Dagger's lack of damage. Dagger's primary fire basically deals no damage, it's mostly for finishing off very low HP targets. And swapping to Cloak to deal damage removes your ability to heal your team, and he's just a very short range character. It's just enough damage to protect yourself in a pinch, but you won't be 100 to 0ing anyone like Mantis can. And while Cloak brings a lot of utility, you're lacking hard crowd control. You don't have anything like a stun or root or freeze or sleep to set up KOs for your team. This makes Cloak and Dagger's usefulness a little more invisible and less straightforward than most strategists. The value this character brings is a little harder to notice than something like Luna popping ult or freezing or Mantis's sleep. Overall, Cloak and Dagger are amazing strategists with some of the most unique utility in the game. Swapping between characters and finding that perfect balance between keeping your team alive and dishing out offensive utility can be challenging, challenging, but once you perfected the art of the swap, the sky is the limit with this character. Be sure to hold Dagger's right click to save yourself and survive dives, listen for enemy ultimates to shroud your team through, and stack your ult up to 3 times to survive almost anything. If you follow these tips, you'll be bringing a ton of value to your team and carrying your games in no time. Let me know which hero you'd like to see a guide on next, and I will see you in the next one, Rivalers.